This was the scene 2 months ago to the day. June 14th, at what may have been the largest mass protest in American history, millions of Americans turned out at No Kings rallies across the country. From big blue cities to small, deep red towns, all of them united with a shared message for the president. We won't bend the knee. Despite the turnout.
Señores, Donald Trump se acaba de consagrar una vez más como el presidente más patético en la historia de Estados Unidos. Su supuesto encuentro de paz con Vladimir Putin ha sido la prueba definitiva. Un show falso donde lo único que vimos fue a Trump desplegando la alfombra roja para el dictador ruso. Y a cambio, Putin lo humilló públicamente, lo ridiculizó en su propia cara y dinamitó cualquier posibilidad de un acuerdo de paz. El resultado: Donald Trump terminó huyendo del escenario como un cobarde. Amigos, hoy vamos a analizar todo lo que pasó en este encuentro, para muchos un encuentro histórico en este segundo mandato, y lo que esto significa para Ucrania. Pues Donald Trump comenzó la conferencia de prensa haciendo lo que mejor sabe hacer, y es prácticamente rendirse ante Putin, llenarlo de elogios como si no fuera un criminal de guerra. Miremos este fragmento. Putin no busca la paz porque él es quien invadió Ucrania. Es él quien ha estado masacrando civiles. Donald Trump y los republicanos intentan negar lo obvio, pero bueno, todos los que tenemos ojos, memoria y algo de moral, sabemos lo que está ocurriendo. Lo que vimos, señores, en este encuentro no fue un esfuerzo diplomático, fue prácticamente un espectáculo manipulado donde Trump bailó al ritmo que Putin le marcó, creyendo que eso lo convierte en un gran negociador. Y lo peor es que Putin logró engañarlo otra vez, tal y como vemos en este momento.
I'd like to remind you that in 2022, during the last contact with the previous administration, I tried to convince my previous American colleague that the situation should not be brought to the point of no return when it would come to hostilities. And I said it quite directly back then, that it's a big mistake. Today, when President Trump saying that if he was the president back then, there will be no war. And I'm quite sure that it would indeed be so. I can confirm that. I think that overall, me and President Trump have built a very good, businesslike, and trustworthy contact. And I have every reason to believe that moving down this path, we can come, and the sooner the better, to the end of the conflict in Ukraine. Thank you. Thank you.
Lo que pasó en esta cumbre no fue un acuerdo por Ucrania, fue un intercambio de favores entre dos egos enfermos. Donald Trump salió diciendo que estaba trabajando por la paz, porque sueña con un premio Nobel. Y Putin, riéndose, afirmó que si Trump hubiera estado en la Casa Blanca en el año 2022, jamás habría guerra. La verdad es otra. Si Trump realmente pudiera detener la guerra, ya lo habría hecho. En lugar de eso, terminó la reunión alabando a Putin sin ningún acuerdo y escapando de la prensa como un niño regañado. Cuando anunciaron que no habría pacto, Trump simplemente se levantó y se fue, evitando
responder. The news conference was anything but. It was not a news conference. There were no questions taken by either leader. There were many yelled by reporters there, but we don't have a sense of what exactly is in this agreement or this deal.
Y atención, señores, con lo más grave, porque Putin dejó claro que la próxima reunión tendría que ser en Rusia. ¿Qué significa eso? Que Trump está dispuesto a legitimar aún más a un dictador. Porque si se presenta en Moscú, como si nada pasara, ignorando que el hombre con el que sonríe y se fotografía es el responsable de miles de muertes, señores, ese será un duro golpe. Lo de esta cumbre ha sido inútil, fue un espectáculo vacío. Pudo haber sido prácticamente un correo electrónico, pero no. Trump le regaló a Putin propaganda, mientras termina legitimando a un criminal de guerra. ¿Quién ganó con esto? Claramente Putin, y sin duda. ¿Quién perdió? Ucrania, Europa, Estados Unidos, el prestigio internacional que tiene el país. Donald Trump no defendió a los ucranianos, no ayudó a los aliados, no fortaleció la posición en el mundo, solo fortaleció a Putin. Y todo esto porque Trump no tiene un liderazgo real. Es tan débil que ni siquiera se atrevió a reunirse con Putin cara a cara antes o después de esta cumbre. Hasta su propio gabinete sabe que en un encuentro directo Trump se derrumbaría. ¿Qué dice esto de Estados Unidos? Que señores, no hay un líder y que el mundo entero lo sabe. Por eso mismo es que la prensa internacional reaccionó con dureza y una de las críticas más acertadas vino por parte de Nicole Wallace, que lo dijo sin filtros.
Russian President Vladimir Putin, he's meeting face to face behind closed doors. They hopped into the president's vehicle, referred to as the Beast, together, which is rare, if not unheard of, about 45 minutes ago, following a literal red carpet welcome for an internationally indicted war criminal stepping foot onto American soil. It's a fact not lost on American citizens nearby. Protests sprouted up all across Anchorage, Alaska. The White House today has done its best to lower expectations, casting doubt on the prospect of a breakthrough peace deal today between Russia and the country it invaded, our ally Ukraine. In other words, this could just be the meeting before the meeting, as President Zelensky wasn't invited and didn't attend this afternoon's meeting in Alaska. In reality, today can best be described as a sequel to one of the most humiliating moments in the history of modern American diplomacy, when Donald J. Trump very publicly and seemingly proudly took the word of Vladimir Putin over the word and the work of his own intelligence community. But that was before. Russia invaded our ally, Ukraine. So I suppose one could hope against hope that Trump is taking this meeting a little more seriously, but the images don't suggest that's the case. Trump spent the flight to Alaska posting on social media about Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. He accused Democrats of paying protesters in Washington, D.C., and he chatted it up with Fox News. Watch.
We're going for a meeting with President Putin in Alaska, and I think it's going to work out very well. And if it doesn't, I'm going to head back home real fast.
I mean, if it doesn't, you walk.
I would walk there.
Okay. So he's going to walk if it doesn't go well. Walking out of the meeting would be the latest in a series of Trump threats having to do with Vladimir Putin, none of which he's followed through on. Remember, first, he said he'd end the war in Ukraine in 24 hours. When that did not happen, he did his classic in 2 weeks routine, which never resulted in anything. Late last month, he issued a deadline of 10 or 12 days to cease hostilities. After that, he set a deadline for August 8th. Now today, which happens to be August 15th, we are where we are, left to guess what is happening inside this high-stakes meeting and any prospect of peace. It's where we start today with some of our favorite reporters and friends. In Anchorage, Alaska, international affiliate correspondent for the Associated Press, Philip Crowther, is here. Also with us, former U.S. ambassador to Russia, MSNBC international affairs analyst, Ambassador Michael McFaul is here. Also joining us, retired U.S. Army Lieutenant General Mark Hertling is here as well. Ambassador McFaul, let me start with you and just what we could see with our own eyes, because I think both these men speak at least to their own publics about not believing what you see and hear. But these are two of the human beings most acutely aware of iconography and images and pictures. And this seems like a red carpet that was placed there on purpose. This seems like a choreographed arrival where Trump couldn't really defer enough to Vladimir Putin. He held on Air Force One to wait for him to land so they could have this moment together. This is more laughing and chuckling and touching than I think I've seen Trump engage in with any of our allies. And then he hops in the Beast. And if not unheard of, it's exceedingly rare. Your thoughts about what we have seen with our own eyes?
Extraordinary. To all of those points you just said, this rarely happens to any leader in the world, our closest allies, let alone to a dictator, an imperialist. the first leader since Hitler and Stalin to have invaded countries in Europe and annexed them, the leader who's kidnapped 20,000 children, who terrorizes and kills Ukrainian civilians every single night, and yet this treatment is just extraordinary. Especially when contrasted to that Oval Office visit that President Zelensky, the democratically elected leader of Ukraine, the way he was humiliated by President Trump just several weeks ago. So I think it raises the ante. I think it raises the bar for President Trump. He gave Putin a meeting. He then, the most powerful man on earth, and you know as well as I do, because we both worked at the White House, the biggest gift, one of the biggest currencies you have working for the United States of America is presidential time. He gave that to him. Then he added to it by bringing him to the United States of America. Now, all of this, including the ride and the beast, I don't know if Putin speaks much English, by the way, but that to me suggests Putin has gotten every...
Pues eso es lo que vimos hoy, señores. Estados Unidos convirtiéndose en un chiste frente al mundo. Los aliados, sin duda desconcertados, la comunidad internacional alarmada y Putin fortalecido. Y todo esto gracias a la incompetencia de Trump. Ahora bien, amigos, millones de personas estarán saliendo durante este fin de semana a las calles. Y no es por moda, no es por capricho, sino porque están hartos del abuso de poder de Donald Trump. Y ahora con esta nueva protesta bajo el lema Fight the Trump Takeover, queda claro que el país ya no le tiene miedo a enfrentarlo. Pues este fin de semana más de 250 ciudades en 20 estados van a ser el escenario de manifestaciones masivas contra Trump y contra este intento descarado de querer controlar cada rincón del país. Estas protestas no son un simple evento aislado, van a ser la continuación de una ola de resistencia que empezó hace meses y que está creciendo como una bola de nieve.
This was the scene 2 months ago to the day. June 14th, at what may have been the largest mass protest in American history, millions of Americans turned out at No Kings rallies across the country. From big blue cities to small, deep red towns, all of them united with a shared message for the president. We won't bend the knee. Despite the turnout, Donald Trump has only expanded his executive powers and flexed with this federal takeover of Washington, D.C. this week. But the Americans who oppose him aren't letting up either. Ezra Levin is the co-founder and co-executive director of Indivisible, which helped organize the No Kings Day protests, and is now holding another national day of action this Saturday called Fight the Trump Takeover in 250 locations across the country. He joins me now. So, Ezra, good to see you. As we get closer to Saturday's protests, what are some of your expectations? What are you preparing for, and what do you want people to take from it?
Look, my expectation is that courage is contagious, and we've seen a lot of courage out there. The Texas reps who left Texas, broke quorum, and defied both Donald Trump and the ruling GOP party in the state to stop the gerrymander in the state, that took guts. That was courage. Now the question is, how do you make that contagious? It can't all be on the Texas reps. We've got to do our part. Saturday is the part where we make it contagious. Saturday is the part where we show up and show the Texas reps they're not alone. They're not alone in this fight against Trump. So if folks are on the sidelines looking at what Trump is doing in Texas, what he's doing in D.C., what he's done to L.A., what he's threatening to do to Missouri and Indiana and Florida, and they're asking, gosh, what can I do? Here's something you can do. You can show the Texas reps who are on the front lines they're not alone. You can show Donald Trump that he doesn't have all the cards, and you can show up and push your own state legislators, especially you all in blue states like a California and Illinois, a Washington and New Mexico. Show them that you want them to fight back. That's what you can do right now.
Are you prepared for the potential attendance, the size, the energy and anger that may be there? I was at the No Kings Day covering it here in the city on the ground in New York. It was pouring rain all day. And still, I mean, I remember that morning thinking, might not be a lot of people to talk to here. And then it smashed expectations. I mean, more than 1 million. You probably know the number better than I do at this point. Do you think that's what we're going to see here? Again, a potential record-breaking moment?
Well, look, there were actually 5 or 6 million people who showed up on No King's Day in 2,269 communities, but who's counting anyway, Antonia? What I would say is this.
Sounds like you are.
In the fight against authoritarianism, not every single protest, not every single action needs to match the scale or the breadth of the one before it. That's not how you build a successful opposition to authoritarianism. What we've learned from overseas fights against autocratic rule, historical fights against autocratic rule in the South and elsewhere, is that you got to keep on building. It is a muscle, and you got to keep on working it. So this Saturday's events, they didn't come together in the span of weeks or months. They came together in the span of days and hours in some cases. So I expect to see events in blue states and purple states and red states. I expect to see a lot of folks who weren't involved before showing up on Saturday. I expect to take this momentum forward because Saturday is one day of protest, and then we build from that towards what will be the next big No Kings protest, which we'll get together sometime afterwards.
So there's one city that does not have a protest planned, and this was the case the last time around too, Washington, D.C., the city that the entire nation is watching right now, in many cases horrified.
Yeah.
By the scenes federal agents fanned out. Many cases, particularly in communities of color, people feel that they're under a microscope, that they're at immense risk. Why no protests there?
Well, look, the sad fact is that Washington, D.C. is under siege, that this regime is occupying the city, and D.C. has not had representation in Congress. There's nothing to gerrymander in D.C. because it's been denied representation in the U.S. Congress since its existence. There are not voting members whose votes count. They do not get senators despite being larger than other states that do have representation. This fight against the power grab that we're seeing from Trump in Texas and possibly in Indiana, Missouri, Florida, elsewhere, it's playing out all across the country. And I hope people who are watching this recognize that it doesn't matter if you're in the deepest red state, if you're in a rural community, if you're in a deep blue state, there is a role for you. The folks in D.C. are organizing with groups like Free DC to push back against this occupying force. But we've all got a part to play. It's not up to each of us to do everything, but it's up to all of us to do something. And if we play our role, look, the house of cards he's built up, it's going to fall over. Because ultimately, this is a weak, lame duck, unpopular president who is not operating from a place of strength. He's operating from a place of weakness and fear because he knows his time is up. He knows his popularity is on the way down. And he fears peaceful, organized people around the country working together to push back. But that's what we're going to do, and that's how we're going to win.
I don't know if you've been able to see there on screen with you at times. We've been able to show some of what's unfolded, just videos that D.C. residents, citizens have taken themselves. What is it like for you to see some of this? You know, I've seen some of the comments on social media, people saying, well, at least police officers have been polite. You know, they've explained that they're here on Trump's orders. But when you've watched a lot of this, what do you take from it?
I have chills, Antonia. I have chills. This is not something I would expect to see in an American city, in the U.S. Capitol. It's not something I would expect to see from our federal government. And unfortunately, I think this is only going to get worse from here on out. We have heard from the Republicans that L.A. was a rehearsal, that D.C. is a rehearsal, and the reason why they haven't been militarizing other American cities is because they hadn't had the money. But they just gave themselves $171 billion for their secret police force, ICE and other agencies. And I expect to see much more of what we're seeing in D.C. in states all around the country, which is why it is so important to not wait until they are at your door to start organizing. People who are watching this and aghast and are shocked and get chills like I do, you should be reaching out to your community, finding other people who think as you do, and organizing. Now is the time.
Pues bueno amigos, estamos hablando de un movimiento ciudadano que se está extendiendo desde los grandes centros urbanos hasta los pueblos más pequeños. Esto es lo que más debería de preocupar a Trump, que ya no puede esconderse detrás de esta narrativa de que solo las grandes ciudades liberales lo rechazan, porque ahora también en estados rojos la gente está diciendo basta. Ojo con un detalle, porque en Washington DC, que pues es justamente la ciudad que Trump acaba de convertir en un laboratorio de control militar, no hay protestas oficiales. ¿Por qué? Porque la ciudad, literalmente, amigos, está ocupada por fuerzas federales bajo sus órdenes. O sea, esto es tan grave que los organizadores mismos lo llaman un asedio. Imaginen esto, ciudadanos de su propio país sintiéndose sitiados por el propio gobierno. Lo más poderoso de estas marchas es el mensaje de unidad, tal y como lo dijo, ¿no?, uno de los organizadores. Esto no va solo sobre Texas, ni sobre California, ni sobre Nueva York. Esto es sobre toda la nación resistiéndose a un intento autoritario. Mientras Trump se presenta como un hombre fuerte, la verdad es que estas protestas lo van a exponer por lo que realmente es: un presidente débil, asustado y cada vez más impopular. Lo que vamos a presenciar, amigos, es el inicio posiblemente de un punto de quiebre. Porque cuando la gente pierde el miedo, cuando millones de ciudadanos deciden salir a las calles al mismo tiempo, yo creo que ningún aparato del poder, ni el dinero, ni las amenazas, ni los discursos de odio podrán detener ese impulso. Y ahí, amigos, ahí está el verdadero temor de Trump. No son solo los políticos, no son solo los jueces, no son los medios. Lo que realmente lo aterra es un pueblo organizado, que ya no está dispuesto a seguirle el juego. Muchísimas gracias por acompañarme hasta el final de este video. Recuerda compartir nuestro contenido, dale like y suscríbete a nuestro canal Políticamente en Desacuerdo. Nos vemos en el próximo video. Hasta luego.